Tonight, Apple's plan to recycle everything, Georgia's big money congressional race, and a new civil rights case against the NCAA.
One mistake shouldn't define us for the rest of our lives.
Before leaving for Indonesia, the next stop on his Asia tour, Vice President Mike Pence reassured Japan over threats from North Korea, promising the U.S. would send more military resources to the region.
Those who would challenge our resolve or our readiness should know we will defeat any attack and meet any use of conventional or nuclear weapons with an overwhelming and effective American response.
United Nations investigators in the Democratic Republic of Congo found 17 mass graves filled with more than 6 dozen bodies, including children. The UN believes Congolese soldiers are responsible and says that if the government doesn't investigate, the International Criminal Court may. The Wall Street Journal reports that ExxonMobil, which Secretary of State Rex Tillerson ran for years, has asked the Treasury Department for a waiver from its sanctions on Russia. The fossil fuel giant wants to restart a joint venture with Russian state oil company Rosneft to drill in the Black Sea. Tillerson made the initial deal with Russian President Vladimir Putin in 2012. It's worth hundreds of billions of dollars.
There's got to be some downside to having a woman president, right? Something that may not fit with that office.
Fox News fired host Bill O'Reilly today. The network and its parent company, 21st Century Fox, reportedly paid out $13 million to 5 women who accused O'Reilly of sexual harassment. He says the claims are, quote, completely unfounded. His polarizing primetime show, The O'Reilly Factor, has been the network's flagship for 2 decades. Utah House Republican Jason Chaffetz announced he won't run for re-election when his term is up in 2018. Chaffetz is head of the House Oversight Committee and presided over last year's investigation into Hillary Clinton's private email server. But he's resisted calls to investigate former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn over connections to Russia. The special election in Georgia's 6th district last night didn't end in an upset by Democrats. At least not yet.
There is no amount of dark money, super PAC, negative advertising that can overcome real grassroots energy like this.
Democrat John Ossoff and Republican Karen Handel will compete in a runoff held in June. But Ossoff has already proven something definitive. That local races like his can attract huge money. Shauna Thomas explains.
It's easy to dismiss this year's series of special elections in Kansas, Georgia, and Montana as just that, special, because it's usually a mistake to look at special elections as a political indicator. Just because the Democratic candidate, John Ossoff, came within striking distance of flipping what should be a comfortably Republican district, doesn't mean he will end up winning in June.
Is he amazing?
But the kind of money that poured into this race offers a lesson for 2018. Ossoff pulled in a literally ridiculous amount of money for his special election primary. According to his FEC filings at the end of March, he had raised $8.3 million. He then added over $300,000 between April 1st and the election. Just to put that $8.3 million in context, during the general 2016 election, both sides in the Georgia 6 race raised $2.3 million total. Breaking down that $8.3 million that Ossoff raised is informative. First, 60% of his donations were small, like $200 or less, which means a lot of individual people were interested in this race. 80% of that money came from people outside of the state of Georgia, and the kicker, 95% of the donations came from outside of the district. What this shows is that even special election House races can bring in national money, especially when Donald Trump is involved. But how do you keep races that are about Donald Trump localized and still bring in all of that money from outside of the district? I talked to Taryn Rosenkrantz, who in DC is known as a digital political fundraising guru, about just that.
in November, we didn't win when we said Donald Trump's a bad guy, and that should be enough. It has to still be those local issues, but it can be how Donald Trump and his rubber stamps in Congress, these Republicans, are just letting down the American people over and over again. But when someone can come from another state and say, but here's my $5 to help you get that message out so you can talk to voters, because what so much of this is about is that people need to feel like they're being talked to and they're being listened to.
So Democrats need 25 seats to retake the majority in the House. According to Cook Political Report, there are about 38 Republican seats that could be competitive. Taryn said it's important that Democrats play the field.
We are going to have to really make sure that everybody's playing the game, regardless of where they live or what state they're in, and that they have the resources they need. And what's great about that is that the grassroots, the people, can actually power that. And now we really have these proof positive data points of which we can show that, hey, it makes a difference.
Four years ago, Apple announced that it was going to make all of its facilities run entirely on renewable energy. In an exclusive, Apple told Vice News that it's 96% of the way toward that goal. And now it's setting another industry-changing objective, making all of its products from recycled or renewable resources.
Before she was Apple's VP of Environmental Policy and Social Initiatives, Lisa Jackson served as EPA administrator under President Obama. And before that, she trained as a chemical engineer.
Do you ever miss the lab?
I miss research. I think as you get older, you realize like it would have been cool to just stay around the lab for a lot longer time, right? Mm-hmm. But what's really nice about this lab is it's sort of where Apple and the environment meet the customer.
Or meet what the customer does to their products.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
At the Apple Environmental Testing Lab, a team of chemists and toxicologists use unusual methods to gauge the impact of their products on users and the environment they live in. A laser, similar to the one used on the Mars rover, vaporizes elements to test for safety. Apple Watch bands and AirPods are stress-tested in beakers of synthetic human sweat. A technician at the lab makes half a gallon of the stuff each day.
How does this lab fall into your announcement about safety, renewables, and being more environmentally friendly?
Part of what we're trying to do, especially this year, is start to close the loop, to use more recycled materials, to mine less from the earth, we say. And in order to do that, you have to have a really tight handle on what's in the products. And the materials that you're using.
But Apple's plan on how to exactly close that loop is admittedly a work in progress.
To do that, to 100% use renewable resources and recycled metals and minerals, that sounds nearly impossible. What's the timeline for this, and how are you going to make that happen?
So we're not going to announce a timeline. We're actually doing something we rarely do, which is announce a goal before we've completely figured out how to do it. I think when people are used to Apple announcing something, then tomorrow we're all there. Mm-hmm. So we're a little nervous, but we also think it's really important because as a sector, we believe it's where technology should be going.
Their renewable energy goal didn't have a timeline either, but they've nearly met it over 4 years. This, however, this is going to be harder. Not only does Apple have to put out the same quality product using recycled materials, but they'll have to figure out how to take apart and melt down old phones. Enter Apple's twin iPhone disassembling robots, Liam.
Liam works on iPhone 6S and can do about 2.4 million phones a year.
And takes it apart component by component.
Yeah, when you're done, you see a pile of cameras, a pile of vibrator motors, a pile of enclosures. And so they can then say, okay, now that I know what you're giving me and I have, certainty around that, let me go and do my thing, which is, separate the material even further and hopefully get it back into the chain.
What effect will having a company like Apple basically turn away from mining have on the mining industry?
I think it's not going to happen quickly, so it's a transition. Part of the reason of talking about it now is so people can start to think about the opportunities for them in this business. Who knows more about recovering metals than people who mine them? And those will probably be some of the folks we'll end up working with.
This is a tenuous time for the agency Jackson once led, but that doesn't seem to affect where she thinks the world is headed.
You know, I'm from New Orleans, so we love a parade. And I don't feel like this, you know, there is a parade happening. We're a part of it. And I don't think that that parade's going to stop because, you know, we here in the U.S. are maybe moving to the back of the line.
Do you think the Trump administration is fighting against the flow of that parade?
You know, I worked over 2 decades at EPA. Really smart people, really dedicated public servants who recognize that it's always been technology that gives us, you know, economic growth and a cleaner environment. And I know for us at Apple, we're looking for clean energy. And there's a lot of companies that are moving in that direction as well. And I don't think they're going to move back.
A hunger strike is underway at an immigration detention center in Tacoma, Washington. It's the second hunger strike at the Northwest Detention Center outside of Seattle, where inmates say they're mistreated and their cases ignored. David Noriega reports.
At least 10 women are refusing to eat in this detention facility outside of Seattle. The current hunger strike is significantly smaller than the one last week, but 40 more detainees say they plan to join on Saturday. ICE refused to let us inside, but we did speak to one of the detainees by phone.
Queremos la libertad, todo lo que más exigimos a migración, la libertad, porque se nos hace injusto como los tienen aquí. Seguido en comida, es como para perros. Hicimos huelga un día y medio la semana pasada y nos dijeron que iban a haber cambios, pero los cambios no se ven. Nos dijeron que una semana, si ellos quieren, pueden hacer el cambio en un instante. La ropa nos la dan usada, nuestras partes se nos dan infección, vamos al médico, nomás nos dan ibuprofeno. Creo que se nos hace injusto el que nos tengan tanto tiempo encerrados. Hay personas que tienen 12 meses.
Both ICE and the private company that run this detention center have denied the detainees' allegations. Hunger strikes have been happening regularly in immigrant detention centers for years. Many detainees feel this is the only way they have to draw attention to their situation. The vast majority of them don't have lawyers, and immigrant detention centers are almost entirely removed from public view. There are more than 200 such facilities across the country, and many of the biggest ones are in isolated locations. This isn't technically a prison. It's a civil detention center where immigrants are held while they wait for their deportation cases to move forward. But the immigration courts have a backlog of more than 500,000 cases, and immigrants are very frequently locked up for months or even years. Most of these facilities are operated by large private prison companies. The GEO Group, which runs this detention center, made $161 million off of immigrant detention in 2015 alone. And that number is almost certainly going to grow under President Trump, who's ordered the Department of Homeland Security to dramatically expand its detention capacity. Just last week, ICE announced a contract for a new detention facility with the GEO Group outside of Houston, likely to be the first of many.
Hundreds of thousands of protesters swarmed the streets in Caracas today to try and topple President Nicolas Maduro. And for the first time, they're refusing to leave until he's gone. The demonstrations have been building steadily for a week and are beginning to look like a civilian overthrow of the government. Maduro's forces have responded to the unarmed protesters with tear gas and live ammunition. A 17-year-old student was shot in the head today, following 6 people killed over the past 2 weeks. Under Maduro, hyperinflation, dire food shortages, and unchecked violence put an already spiraling country on the verge of total collapse. And many Venezuelans feel like they have nothing left to lose.
Desde la muerte de Hugo Chávez Frías, ya la cuestión estaba un poco difícil. Más sin embargo, con este gobierno de Nicolás Maduro, se ha puesto aún más difícil. Mi nombre es Jesús Blanco, administrador de profesión, y tengo 4 años trabajando como taxista. Hay muchos profesionales en este país que son taxistas. Te puedo hablar de abogados, te puedo hablar de médicos, te puedo hablar de ingenieros. Hace 4 años, cuando yo empecé a trabajar en esta profesión, yo me llevaba para mi casa 5.000 bolívares fuertes y yo era feliz. Yo decía, wow, tengo para ahorrar. Ahora te estoy hablando de 20 a 30 mil bolívares diarios y no me alcanza. O sea, nosotros tenemos una inflación de aproximadamente, en lo que va de año, de un 300-400%. Estos son $7, nada más, con el precio que tenemos aquí en Venezuela con el mercado paralelo. Bueno, estamos echando gasolina. Si ustedes lo llevan a la comparación de una botellita de agua mineral, cuesta 1.500 bolívares y nosotros echamos la gasolina por $1 el litro. Es increíble. Estamos en Venezuela y estamos subsidiados. Lo primero lo económico, lo segundo lo social. De verdad que está muy duro. Yo anteriormente trabajaba de noche, pero la delincuencia ahorita en la noche ha tomado más fuerza. Yo máximo 6, 7 de la noche ya estoy en casa. Porque no se puede, ¿no? Venezuela ha cambiado del cielo a la tierra. Nunca vi familias enteras, papá, mamá e hijos, comiendo en la basura. Jamás. Es tanto que ahora lo tienen dividido. Si esta familia ya está acá en esta esquina, con la comida, con esa basura, no puede venir otra familia. Esa esquina es de esa persona. Hemos llegado a eso, a ese extremo.
In recent years, there's been a nationwide effort to ease severe hiring restrictions for rehabilitated felons. But the NCAA has gone in the other direction. In 2012, the College League banned anyone who'd ever been convicted of any kind of felony from participating in an NCAA-certified event, whether as an organizer, referee, or coach. One of those coaches, Dominic Hardy, is suing the NCAA on grounds that the new rule violates the Civil Rights Act, because the vast majority of people it affects are minorities. And the case could end up in the Supreme Court.
This is like the Mecca. This court is where a lot of players from all through the city came to kind of gauge to see what their game was. That's when I kind of developed my competitive edge, because it was so hard to get on the court. All the top players in the city were playing at this court.
Dominic Hardy for 3 there, and the Bees go on to win the Gamble Classic for the 2nd straight year.
Dominic Hardy is a former high school basketball star from Port Arthur, Texas.
I started playing basketball in the 1st or 2nd grade, actually. As soon as I was able to start walking, you just wanted to get on a team and you wanted to have an opportunity to win state because it meant so much to this city. I mean, it's kind of like on this side of the town, it's kind of all we had.
What's more special? Is it the MVP or is it the state championship?
The state championship for the whole team. This just like a little present or something for my birthday, because today's my birthday.
Hardy was the MVP of his high school state championship team, but he struggled after graduating and never found success playing professional basketball.
So basketball was my identity, and I didn't think I had anything else to offer. I didn't want people in my community to think that I wasn't playing basketball anymore. That was the reason that I made the decision to sell drugs, because, you know, it's quick money. Everybody around me was doing it, and it was just easy. In 2001, I was arrested for possession of cocaine with intent to distribute. That day actually was the day I believe my life started.
Okay, that's the 3rd shot.
That's better. Get deep.
In 2009, Hardy co-founded Triple D Hoops, an AAU basketball club, with his friend Monica Roberts.
Dominic likes helping kids out because he sees it as an opportunity he did not have. So he can speak to them on that and say, this is something that can kind of take you somewhere that he hadn't experienced before.
It's like my most natural skill is to coach or to motivate or just to encourage. I call it teaching.
Their players hope to get recruited for college through participation in NCAA-certified tournaments. But after 3 successful summers, his past caught up with him when the NCAA changed its rules about coaching eligibility.
I was logging in to find out if my certification had been renewed because I had confidence that it would be, and it said I was banned for life. They actually said that. I was kind of heartbroken.
He has one felony conviction for possession of a controlled substance, and that was 16 years ago. He's a social worker. He's been certified by the state of Texas to work with children. He worked in the Texas foster care system. He's never committed another offense since then. They preclude anyone from coaching in certain NCAA certified tournaments if they have suffered any sort of felony conviction whatsoever. It doesn't matter how long ago it was. In fact, 80% of the people who were denied coaching certification because of a felony conviction are African American.
We had a unique legal theory in this case. We argued that the NCAA's rule essentially violated Title II, which is a federal civil rights law that requires that all public accommodations, such as stadiums and sporting venues, be equally open to the public.
Dominic being banned, it affected our kids because the kids had to get used to Coach Dominic not sitting next to Coach Monica.
Not having that direct contact, it was kind of a detriment. It was just something as simple as when one of our girls has missed 5 shots in a row and she feels like the whole world is caving in, sometimes I would just say, you're gonna hit the next shot. Shots might not go in. All right, you might not remember the plays, but what you can control is your effort and your intensity and being a good teammate, all right?
We're waiting for a decision, and that could take anywhere between a month or a year. The Court of Appeals could theoretically send it back for the trial court to sort out. It could reject the NCAA's arguments, which would essentially mean that we'd proceed to trial. We could lose, we'd have to further appeal it to the entire Ninth Circuit, or alternatively, you can attempt to petition to the Supreme Court to get the Supreme Court to hear your case.
The NCAA did not agree to an interview, but it said its policy is, quote, designed to protect the safety and well-being of the youth who participate in events hoping to be recruited by NCAA coaches in attendance.
But if you know when to use your speed and if you're accurate and precise in every move you make, you don't have to be the fastest guy in the world. Come on.
Currently, Hardy continues to coach his team at practice and non-NCAA certified events, but he's no longer a head coach. If the ban against felony convictions is upheld, his coaching career is unlikely to advance any further.
People with backgrounds often have to hide and have to be ashamed of a one mistake they made. And in my case, I made one mistake.
That's Vice News Tonight for Wednesday, April 19th.